I'm going to talk about the temporary protected status policy. But to do that, I have to start with the framework that houses it, which is the Immigration Act of 1990. This was a major reform to immigration policy. It upped the immigration cap by hundreds of thousands to 700,000 people a year. It introduced multiple employment based visas. It created a system for allowing immigration from underrepresented countries. And it also changed language that had previously been used to disallow immigration of those with specific mental health issues and suspected homosexuals. However, the other side of the act, it substantially increased border patrol funding for building border walls, and it increased the penalties for undocumented immigrants and allowed for easier deportation of them. The act can be approached from any view and argued to support that view, such as a positive humanitarian view, or directed protection of the border, and so on and so forth. But at its core, the act is purely a device for attracting skilled labor into the country, while everything built out around that are concessions to get the act implemented. Um, so, one of those concessions was the temporary protected status policy, which gave immigrants living in the country uh, temporary legal status and authorization to work if their home country was designated to be in crisis, meaning war, or even a natural disaster of some sort. And this was only added after really strong lobbying from humanitarian groups. And I think there is no greater way to show the disparity between the intended purpose of the Immigration Act and the temporary protected status than two direct quotes from George Bush's own statement released upon signing the act into law. To quote from the opening two paragraphs, this act recognizes the fundamental importance and historic contributions of immigrants to our country. A complementary blending of our tradition of family reunification with increased immigration of skilled individuals to meet our economic needs. This legislation meets several objectives of this administration's domestic policy agenda: cultivation of a more competitive economy. And to quote the final paragraph of this statement in its entirety, this is what he ended on when discussing an historic piece of legislation purported to be a recognition of the important contributions of immigrants to our country. Quote, in signing this legislation, I am concerned with the provisions of S 358 that creates a new form of relief known as the temporary protected status. The power to grant temporary protected status would be, except as specifically provided, the exclusive authority by which the Attorney General could allow otherwise deportable aliens to remain here temporarily because of their nationality or their region of origin. I do not interpret this provision as detracting from any authority of the executive branch to exercise prosecutorial discretion in suitable immigration cases. Any attempt to do so would raise serious constitutional questions. End quote. His entire statement on historical legislation is bookended by an appeal to recognize executive authority, both in general and in regard to whether we should allow people remain in this country when returning them home could result in death. His words after signing are the only metric needed to see what the underlying purpose of this legislation is. The entirety of the act is built around stealing talent from around the world in a post Cold War post Cold War world that sees globalization realized and American dominance beginning to wane. Um, so, if the purpose of the act was to let the right people in, what are the consequences of the temporary protected status policy letting the wrong ones in? And this is where personality, emotion, policy, and observable reality begin to deviate hard. And that deviation is logically consistent with the nature of our species. First, the policy doesn't allow for any path towards citizenship, so it is temporary with a capital T. It is inherently a human rights deferral program or a giant rug that we can sweep people under when we have guests and then dump them the second we have the opportunity. The Department of Homeland Security designates and undesignates countries as being in crisis. So the lives of these people are dependent on any number of factors and the whims of department heads. They are not actually protected by the law because the law simply establishes a binary line of on and off to be determined by man. So understanding the ethereal nature of the protected designation is of incredible importance when looking at what happens to the people that live with that designation, because they live and they exist in a superposition that could collapse at any moment, and everything they've done or worked toward could be erased in an instant. Uh, but that precarious situation ends up having no bearing on what they end up accomplishing, and as stated before, is logically consistent with the nature of human beings. Uh, the Congressional Research Services estimates that in 2024, there were 570,000 people living in the U.S. Under the temporary protected status. They estimate that overall they enter the workforce at a greater rate than their US born counterparts. And additionally, they provide $21 billion annually to the economy and $5.2 billion to combined in federal, payroll, state, and local taxes. And the Center for Migration Studies found that just from El Salvador, looking at El Salvador, Honduran, and Haitian immigrants under the protected status, 30% of them owned homes. They are partaking in what they are offered. So, additionally, these people they work in every single industry imaginable, and they are not relegated to the stereotypical historical image of the agricultural migrant worker. They exist within every major system of our country that they have access to. So we have an immigration act that aims to pull skilled labor from around the world to make a post Cold War country more competitive in emerging sectors that we may be ignored. And within that act, we have created a concession that allows those from countries in crisis to remain temporarily when they would otherwise face deportation and possible death. So they exist in limbo day to day and moment to moment with no certainty they will be here for a month or 50 years. And they inevitably still use that time to enter the workforce and become a major piece of our economy. Their very existence undermines many of the foundational arguments made against increased or undocumented immigration. Borders exist as a form of economic control, and then perceived economic benefit is used as a barometer for immigration worthiness, which in turn demonizes poor immigrants as being unworthy, which it completely undermines the very idea of immigration. Uh, the wider racist implications completely aside, the US has created a system of having your cake and eating it too, where it attempts to turn the mechanisms of cost benefit into systems of benefit cost. Uh, we need you to come here and produce, but only if you're at a certain level of wealth and education that you can thank us for the privilege of allowing you to do so. So, what temporary protected status shows is that all people need is stability and opportunity. So, we aim to produce and succeed. It's genetic. We are builders and explorers, and it's innate to humanity and not a product of inherited opportunity or country of origin. It's all resource access related. So there are a few theories at play here. The entire thing fits neatly within a Marxian conflict theory box. The Immigration Act was and is foremost a tool to accumulate capital. The law is inherently a self serving mechanism for capitalists to import labor to exploit and generate wealth. The temporary protected status, though it's only a piecemeal concession, it inadvertently creates a reserve army of labor, which Marx argued that the capital class needs in order to keep wages low and the working class meeting impossible demands for fear of being replaced. Meanwhile, these people exist as a wholly separate underclass of unprotected non citizens that still generate wealth. It allows participation in the market, but no voice in the market. You can exist, but you cannot be an active participant in the decision making process. Uh, while the temporary status provides a massive benefit to the person and the economy, regardless of person or party and intent, it is class control at every level disguised as humanitarian effort. The other theory here at play is labeling theory, and this one is incredibly strong. Internalized beliefs by migrants ignored because the labeling issue is directed towards them by politicians and media, which spreads outwards amongst the general population. And it starts at the very beginning with the law itself. Uh, these people are legally non citizens with no path to becoming citizens. Uh, they are lifetime designated as a class unto themselves. This means immediate structural bias at every level. They are institutionally otherized, which bleeds into the social zeitgeist. You couple the otherization with historical classist ideals, and we have sweeping descriptors of the generalized immigrant as lazy, freeloader, job stealer, criminal, and it all stems from state authorized legal exclusion. Um, so, whether this policy functions in a beneficial way or not is entirely up to the metric you'd like to use to measure success. It provides safety, access to resources, opportunity, and the basic ability to create and sustain a life. But it also creates a new underclass of non citizens, allowing them to produce for the state but have no say in the operation of the state. Legalized slavery might be a stretch, but we are certainly within the ballpark if we take a 30,000 foot view. You can produce, you can live on the grounds, and you have the autonomy to travel within the bounds. But you cannot participate in events in the house. You cannot have a say as to anything that happens on the grounds. If you leave the grounds, your life is forfeit, and if we deem it, you can be removed. Production without agency is slavery. Production without agency is slavery. Uh, so the social narrative on immigration in general needs to be upended. But if one were interested in turning this policy into an actual humanitarian policy, there are two ways to do that. The most obvious is the inclusion of a path to citizenship. There is no excuse, none, for a person being able to live their entire life in a country as a non-citizen on the brink of deportation. It's death row with a hidden lottery to determine execution date. That type of existence comes with myriad issues: anxiety, trauma, PTSD, an inability to financially plan, and it upends long term goals and the ability to make decisions. The people that fall under the umbrella of protected need absolute, uncomplicated, direct paths to permanency. The second fix is the removal of the Department of Homeland Security in this equation. The DHS is inherently a political organization when the heads and acting heads are determined by the political party in office. Designations of countries in crisis can be made on whims or political ideologies instead of the realities of the world. The policy needs objective, codified metrics for determining the status of people and country. Uh, the big takeaway here regarding the temporary protected status is that it works to a degree in spite of itself. But the nougat core of the policy, uh, whether originally intentioned or not, is exploitation. Its very nature allows for capitalist loopholing and manipulation. It offers the right to exist, but at the whims of those who have the power to allow it. Numbers and data are necessary pieces of efficacy and proofs, and the people that fall into this policy are proof that access and opportunity are what people want. An argument can be made about whether the need to produce is intrinsic to our species or a byproduct of our historical path. Uh, but the need to produce something or anything is there regardless. And this policy reflects that through the successes of the overwhelming majority of people that are part of it. But regardless of success and failure, these people are human beings that deserve infinitely better than the scraps that are thrown to them. Thank you.